Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Let's go ahead and continue on. It's group introduction time. If you're here for the first or second time, would you please indicate that after you say your name? My name is Doug.
Peter. Bob. Tony.
Bill first time.
Tom second.
Gary.
Michael.
Hello.
Bill. Marvin.
Peter. George.
Leuven.
Roy.
Rule.
Bill.
Terry.
Bob.
I'm Clint.
My name is Tom.
Brian.
My name is Ari.
Kathy.
Jim.
Eric. Richard.
Baylor.
My name is Ray Dyer.
Jim.
Larry. Ben. Ralph.
My name is Jay.
David. Who's John? Harley.
Mark. My name is Howard Eastport.
I'm Bill.
Okay, please make the newcomers feel welcome. And we have today something we especially enjoy, another Dharma Duo. Two fine fellows of the GBF, Mark Hoffheimer and Baruch Golden. And Baruch is speaking today even though he has a bad cold. So please be especially kind to him. Mark is, I think, going to speak first.
That's correct. Okay. It's nice to be here. And I think it's been an interesting time to sort of reflect back on my spiritual path and what that is and what that's been like. And I realized in doing this that thematically, I think the two things that seem to keep coming up for me is community and connectedness. Those seem to be the two big themes, and or the lack thereof, and we can discuss as we go through. But I think I'll just start quickly from the beginning. I am Jewish. I grew up in a very tight-knit German Jewish community in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it was. And it's kind of interesting because in Cincinnati, it's considered the cradle of Reform Judaism, and that was my upbringing, was Reform Judaism. And the temple that we belonged to, the congregation we were part of, from my parents, there was too much ritual, too much Hebrew, and they started their own congregation, which is still going today. And I really mention this because I was not bar mitzvah, I didn't go to Hebrew school, I didn't learn much about Judaism in a way. So what really it was for me was the culture and the sense of Jewish identity. And virtually all of my friends were Jewish, and my parents, children of my parents' friends, and so forth and so on. So, and having said that, I think that the notion of service to others, of charity, of community, of family. I don't know if that's just who my parents were, but and it's very strong in the Jewish tradition, and that's something it's really part and parcel of who I am. At least the values I grew up with. And I think one of the things that's sort of interesting about it for me is that in this tight-knit community, being gay, and I didn't realize I was gay at the time, and it took me a long time come to accept it or be in touch with those things, I still felt somehow apart. Here I was, this community, and yet I wasn't part of it. I never really could sort of, who am I, find my place, because there was an expectation of, of education, family, children, and so on and so on. And that just wasn't for me. That wasn't who I was. I was completely out of touch around that, but something was missing, and I knew that. And then the whole thing about sort of worshiping to God and being in God's will and all this stuff, and I'm God was stuff I just didn't resonate with me. I didn't connect. So that was my upbringing. And then I guess I could fast forward into my 40s. I mean, it really after that, I didn't have much of a spiritual practice. I just kind of went through my life. And I would go to Friday night services now and again, and nothing really spoke to me. And that's kind of what was most of my life, I'd say. And I do want to mention my profession, which is city planning, getting back to the notion of community and connectedness. I pursued that as a career. I still am as a city planner, and some of the fundamental values there is really around shared appreciation and shared vision. Because what I do is I go into communities and we're trying to envision what the future might be. And you go through a process and you create, hopefully if you do it well, you create a shared vision of what that can be like. And so professionally, that's what I do, and that's what I do right now. And the idea of creating, designing and creating places that can afford community, that can afford connectedness, the streets, the sidewalks, the plazas, all those things that create community life, create a setting for community life and civic life is something I feel very strongly about. It's something I do professionally now. So that's what I'm up to. That's what I've been up to for much of my career. So fast forward then into my 40s, and there really are three things, I guess you could say, that really brought me to the place I am today, and that is the Billy Club, this life coach I saw, and Buddhism, my Buddhist practice. And the Billy Club, I know there's a bunch of Billies out there, and many of you have heard about it, and so on and so on. But its mission is to foster community, intimacy, and personal exploration in a heart-centered brotherhood. That's its mission statement. And I showed up to a gathering, and what they do is they put on, there's these gatherings, like 5 to 6 gatherings a year, held in a rural location. And I won't go into how it got started, except to say that it did come out of the AIDS crisis in the 1980s. And there was a place, here was a group of men and a place where I really could get more in touch with my heart. I could begin to feel in a very base way. And one of the absolute fundamental ritual of the Billy Club is the Heart Circle, which people can choose to participate or not participate in, but when you go to a gathering, they are held every morning. And this is a place where the community can sit in a circle, and there's some rules, there's no cross-talking, confidentiality, so forth. But the idea there is that you can be an active listener, and you can choose to speak if you care to, but you speak and share from the heart. And this is a place that really let me feel. I just could really be in the moment of the moment, in a very base emotion in a way that I really hadn't been much in my life. And I had moments of joy and despair and all sorts of things that happened through the Heart Circle and afterwards. And so here you are in these retreats, and people are open, and I felt like maybe for the first time I was seen. in some ways. I felt like I was seen. I didn't feel judged. I felt like I could just own myself completely, and it really was cool. It was good. And I really came out of a shell in a big way there. A part of the community, part of the Billy Club is around service. You're expected to help to prepare meals, and you sign up for duties. And so there's this whole notion of constantly, this notion of being in service. And in fact, I'm actually the president of the Billy Foundation, the board of directors for this community. And that's happened within the last 5 years. And so that's a big part of what I do outside of my job. I also wanted to, I'll get to this a little bit later. So that's the Billy Club. Now I'm going to tell you the story, which I think many of you have heard before. This is the story about how I got turned on to, how I moved into my Buddhist practice. I was just feeling very discontented and just, I just was unhappy. And I was going to go see a therapist to sort of work these things out, figure this out. And my boyfriend at the time suggested I go see a life coach, which is what I did. And this was in 2005. And basically for me, two things came out of this life coach experience. One was that I needed to meditate. She said, you got to meditate. You have to get out of your head, calm down, quiet the mind, be still, and all these sorts of things. And that's really where I started my meditation practice, is through this woman, Abigail, this life coach. I mean, we literally sat together. I was very resistant to the idea, so naturally. So we sat together even on occasion. And the second thing that happened that came out of this life coach experience was that I had, at the time, I was really sick of my job. I had been in it for 15 years, and I just wanted to quit. And I said, I want to quit my job. And she'd say, you have to have a plan. And I said, I don't want a plan. And I'm like, oh. So anyway, but she insisted upon it. So, all right, very well. So then I stopped seeing her, and then some very, and then some very months later, in early 2006. I realized it was quite clear that I needed to quit my job. It just was very, very clear to me. I just wanted to quit my job. So I called up Abigail, and I said, may I meet with you? She said, yes, you may. And I said to her, I have a plan. And she said, what is it? And I said, my plan is to quit my job and to deepen my Buddhist practice, deepen my meditation practice. She said, you have a plan. So that's really how that began. And really in 2006 was the time that I started meditating daily, that I did a lot of reading. I spent 10 days in Tassajara. I went on a couple of retreats, and really I became more involved in this sangha, and that's really where my practice began. I could say more formal practice, if it were. So that's the life coach piece. I'm in gratitude to her. Those were good words of advice. And now Buddhism. So I'm going to wrap my discussion of Buddhism back to the Billy Club, because it kind of is part of the whole stew, But love, compassion, joy, equanimity. These are values that I hold very dear, and of course are fundamentals of Buddhism. But the meditation, and for me, as I mentioned, just sort of quieting the mind, being more mindful, being more aware, but just really what it is for me is just creating a spaciousness for myself that I can be more in the moment, be more present, and be more engaged in the world around me. And so, and I'll get back to it in a moment, but that is, and what I was going to say is, and I think it was the thing I started with at the beginning was, here I'd go for a day-long sitting, or I'd come to this group or whatever, and I wasn't, you were sitting together, I'll say in community, in a sangha, but we don't communicate. We're not speaking to one another. We're not talking to one another. And there's hardly any eye contact. So here I was, someone craving connectedness and community, and yet I was in a practice where there was literally no communication. And I struggled with that at the beginning. But I really realized that a couple of things is that it's just the beauty of, being in a place where others are doing what you are doing, which others are, it's that whole notion of having that shared experience of being in support of one another, honoring one another, all those things that happen just by being in the same room together. And I think that through this practice and this notion of spaciousness is how I put it, it really let me in Heart Circle and back at the Billy Club really be in a place where I was more present and more open to those connections. This notion of dana, this notion of really making a contribution from a place of gratitude is something that I think is a beautiful notion. And it's something that, again, I've taken back to even in my service on the board at the Billy Club. It really is coming from a place of gratitude. I can tell you it isn't fun. There's not much fun about it. But nonetheless, it's something I believe in. It's something I take a pleasure in being in service to. So the notion of this service, and being in practice, at the Billy Club, of being in practice of love and compassion, all those things I think is really very powerful for me. One of the things that I have pondered, even about the Billy Club, is how to bring some of these Buddhist practices, into, kind of integrate the two somehow. I don't know what that looks like, but I've thought about it. And I think that this is being done here in some regards as well. And I will say that I think about there was a quote I took from somebody, Thich Nhat Hanh or somebody, habit energy is pulling us along and I am powerless. And I just really kind of want to own that too, this notion of habit energy and feeling powerless, because that is also a part of what I struggle with and some of my suffering comes from. In particular, I have sort of a sexual addiction. I'm on the computer looking at men and jerking off a lot, and it's something I struggle with, and it's a habit that I really have struggled to break. So I kind of want to own that and sort of share that with you. So that's something I ponder quite a bit, the notion of habit. And the other thing I want to mention too is about right speech. I think, and again, I only know it my own simplistic way. I don't pretend to really have a lot of deep knowledge of Buddhism in a lot of ways, but if I would say for myself, if at its simplest, if right speech is not causing harm to others, if that's just its basic, that's sort of the basic part of it. Helping to maintain balance in situations may be another way of looking at it. I have to honestly say that there probably isn't a day that goes by when I don't think about, when I don't stop myself from saying something. Every single day this happens. Because I used to, I don't say I used to be a funny guy, maybe I'm still a funny guy, but there were things there were phrases I could say, little cutting remarks I could make that would be sort of funny but biting. And I really make a point of not saying those anymore. If I feel that my words really will hurt others, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but it's something I'm really, for whatever reason, it's really something that's very important to me. I'm very mindful of. And I think that's something that's really, and as an aside, I look at Sarah Palin, not to get too political about it, and it drives me crazy, the things that she was saying. It drives me crazy. God, it's so harmful. Why? Why is this? So, but anyway, that's so that's kind of a quick and dirty overview. I do want to emphasize this notion of gratitude, because that's probably something else I think about every day too. And I do feel blessed, and I do hold a lot of gratitude towards this group and the other communities I'm part of and my family. And so anyway, I think that's about it. So I don't know, was it text for questions or something, or do you just turn to the next speaker? How does this work?
We'll have a room and then take questions.
What's that?
We'll listen to
Oh.
Faith and then we'll go.
Thank you all. Can I see? Yeah, here's it's right here.
Wow, it's really different sitting up here. So, ooh, I'm looking at all these people that have already sat up here. So, one of the reasons why I agreed to do this was because for a while I was a speaker scheduler, and it was so hard to find people to sit up here. And I had been refusing to do this for a couple of years, and finally I thought, well, I don't want to do it, but I'll do it. And then Mark agreed, and I thought, well, that's good. I had a good partner to do it with. So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, in preparing, like in my mind for this, I found it to be a really interesting experience of reviewing my life and related to my practice, and to think about that. It was really, I found that to be kind of a gift, and looked at what I thought was interesting to me. And I'm currently in a 2-year program at Spirit Rock. It's called Path of Engagement. And a couple of retreats ago, Joanna Macy, who came, has spoken here at least once, and I thought did a really amazing Dharma talk, came in. We did this exercise, and maybe some of you have done work with Joanna Macy, but we were sitting in fours, and we were sitting with our ancestor, our future ancestor, whatever, someone in the future, and someone else, and it was to look at right livelihood. And she had us go through these exercises, and I found all of her exercises to be amazingly emotional. And at the end of the exercise, the conclusion that I came up with of what I wanted to really do in my life was I wanted my life to move more into kind of a like almost all meditation, and I wanted to figure out how I could get paid for just doing that. And I just thought, oh, I'll be a teacher. And so I have an assigned teacher, and I told him, and he's like, oh, great. And then I realized, this was last year, I realized, oh, if you teach, then you have to know what you're talking about. You have to speak in front of people. It's kind of scary. So I started doing these little exercises with him. He decided, and my mentor teacher, some of you know him. He's come here a few times, is Donald Rothberg. So he's an interesting guy. And he suggested I start doing little 5-minute Dharma talks when I meet with him. So now when I go and I sit with him, I prepare a 5-minute Dharma talk. And it's been a really interesting experience to sit and talk about the Dharma in front of this guy who is just really knowledgeable about the Dharma. And after I talk, he'll just give me like a few minutes of positive feedback, and then he'll correct all the errors I made about the Dharma. This is 5 minutes, really. Anyway, so I basically started my spiritual practice when I was, I was interested in spirituality in my late teens, and I was living in a collective household with about 8 different people, and 2 of the people in the household were teachers of transcendental meditation. One of the, most of the people that I was living with were friends of mine that I was close to in high school, and there was one woman, and at that time I was sort of struggling to come out, and there's a woman there that I was very drawn to for some reason, and she just even couldn't abide. She couldn't even be in the room with me, and we just had this very stressed, conflicted relationship. And she was, after we'd been living there for a couple of months, she was instructed in transcendental meditation. She started, and almost immediately she became a completely different person. And I was just shocked that a change like that could happen. So a couple weeks later, I put down my $35, started transcendental meditation, and became a part of this household where everybody, almost all 8 of us, were meditating. And at that time, there were centers, so they were like, kind of like sanghas, but they were centers that you could go to and practice. And shortly, right after that, they started offering these, what they called advanced practice techniques. And I became very fascinated with the advanced practice techniques because one of the things that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who's the founder of Transcendental Meditation, talked about was the 7 states of consciousness. And I was totally into the 4th state is transcendental consciousness, and the 5th one is cosmic consciousness. And I just really wanted to have that experience. I wanted cosmic consciousness. It just sounded really awesome. And so I just decided, well, I'm just going to do whatever I could. And at the time, we were hearing these rumors about these advanced practices, and they were talking about supernatural abilities. They were called the cities, and people being able to fly, and it became known as yoga flying and things like that. And my teacher gave me this book, How to Know God, and it was sort of an explanation of sutras that were cognized by Patanjali. And in it, there was this one passage that I read, and when I read it, it was just like, bam, that's what I want. It said, concentration may be attained by fixing the mind upon the inner light, which is beyond sorrow. And at that time, I was really suffering a lot. I was a gay boy with a heterosexual identity really struggling to come out. And I was having a very acute experience of suffering. I'm sure everybody's had that experience. And so what it said was, ancient yogis believed that there was an actual center of spiritual consciousness called the lotus of the heart, between the abdomen and the throat, and that you could put your attention on that, and that, let's see, it's a form of a lotus, and it shone with an inner light, and it was beyond sorrow. And those who were able to do that practice were filled with an extraordinary sense of peace and joy. And I was like, wow, extraordinary sense of peace and joy, that's what I want. So it's like, so then when the cities came out, at that time you had to put in a lot of retreat time. And it was sort of like, to me, it was like sitting in a cave because you just went in your room and all you did was meditate. You just came out for meals, there was no talking, and you had to do about 4 months of this kind of tedious sitting. So I did that, and I brought this book, of course, with me, and it was talking about, this is before I even knew what the experiences were, and it was talking about the combination of concentration, meditation, and absorption, which they called samadhi. And I was just like, wow, that sounded really interesting. And it's talking about how concentration is holding the mind within the center of the spiritual consciousness in the body. And meditation is an unbroken flow of thoughts towards the object of concentration. And then when you do that, when you're able to do that, you could actually get into a state of absorption. And so, of course, I became very focused on that because I really wanted that. So I signed up for the advanced practice cities, and it was given over a series of weeks. And the final city was the walking through air, or the flying one. And I was really interested in that one because there was so much mystery around it. And but at the same time, I was very conflicted because I had internalized a lot of homophobia, and I felt that I might not be able to be successful at that because my being gay or queer was some kind of flaw that I needed to work out, and that could actually interfere with my success with this practice. And so I was obsessed with that. I was just obsessed with it. I was just thinking about it all the time. When we actually got the technique, they took us, all these people that we'd been practicing with, into these rooms, and it was just all foam. And they gave us the technique, and I remember just kind of, I don't really pray, but I was just praying that it would work. And I sat down, I closed my eyes, and I had the most amazing experience where I opened my eyes and I was just on the other side of the room. And I was just shocked because I had no really memory of how I had gotten there. And since then I'd talked with some teachers at Spirit Rock about experiences like that, and I learned that that's kind of a Kundalini experience, and that there's all kinds of, that a lot of people who do meditation have Kundalini experiences, and that was just a kind of Kundalini practice. And based on that experience, I was totally convinced that there was something to meditation, because I just didn't feel like something like that could happen without, it was just like outside of my experience, so I was very committed to that. And at the time they were billing it like there are other supernatural abilities, invisibility, walking through walls, all this stuff, and I just thought, well, I'm totally into comic books, and I love X-Men and all that stuff, and I was just like, I would really like to develop just one of those abilities. And including talking to animals and knowledge of the stars and things like that. So I was just really into that. So I moved up to San Francisco. I miraculously found all these gay men who were practicing TM, and I sort of developed a sangha with them. And then over the period, that's when AIDS happened, and then almost all of them died during that period, and my sangha sort of disappeared. And then about shortly thereafter, the next phase of my practice came in where I met a woman that I was working with, a friend, and we decided, it was right at the beginning of the crest of parenting, and we decided that we would parent together. And so we had a child together who now is a young adult. And I spent most of that time just parenting her, and that became my practice, because for any of you who are parents, you know that you're not prepared. Like, they don't teach you how to be a parent, and every situation that comes up is a new situation. You have no knowledge of how to deal with the situation, and the only way to really deal with a situation like that is to be present and aware of the moment. And so that's kind of how I started developing my practice outside of meditation, because something would happen and I would just sit with it and think, how can I deal with the situation? And usually the answer would be, I don't know. And I would be confused about it, and so then I wouldn't do anything until I could figure out what I felt was the right thing to do. And of course, in talking with my daughter now, she said that used to drive her crazy because something would happen and I'd go, oh, I just have to think about this. It was really interesting at the time. Her mother is kind of an interesting person, and she went to an astrologer and, to figure out what would be the best sign for a child to be born in, which she figured out was a Cancer, and my daughter, Jamie, is a Cancer. She was born exactly during that time, and she also went to some other mystics who told them that in a previous life she had been very spiritual, and she's like a nun, and that we needed to keep her away from spiritual and religious practice. And so her mother became very focused on that, and it's ironic now that her mother has started her own meditation practices, very connected to Eugene Cash, and goes to the sitting on Sunday nights, and currently she's in a retreat right now up at Spirit Rock. And so I just think it's sort of ironic for Jamie that both of her parents are into that. And of course she's not into it at all, but so but then what happened, since all the people that I was practicing with had kind of died, I started really craving a sangha to sit with, and I was also born and raised Jewish, and I started going to synagogues and looking for a sangha in synagogues. At the same time, I started going to random different sanghas and sitting with those, and that was when somehow I came here. And I was a very shy member. I would come, I would sit, and then I would just leave. Immediately after the Dharma talk for a couple of years. And I think at the time it was a little overwhelming to me. All the Dharma teachers just blurred into one person. All the Sangha members just were like the same person. All the Dharma talks was just a big blur, and I couldn't really remember anything. But the thing that I was really drawn to was the sitting. I would just come here, and I just felt like a lot of silence had developed in this room, and you just sit here and you just kind of sink into it. It's very healing kind of experience. And so I started sitting here, and then I really craved a teacher. And we have this great exposure to all these teachers, so I just really wanted to find one. And I joined this program at the Zen Center. I forget what it's called. Let's see. A Path of Practice. And it's it's a program for people who live in the city. I don't know, maybe some of you have participated in that. And I lasted like about 2 months in the program because I just found it to be kind of not the right experience for me. And shortly after that, I found this program at Spirit Rock, Path of Engagement. Was very interested in it because the program really focuses on taking individual spiritual practice into your work. And one of the ethical foundations for it is that they talked about was opening to suffering, opening to compassion. And at that time, and still now, I do hospice work. And I was working with people that were having a tremendous amount of suffering. And I was really struggling to create a spaciousness so that when I would go in to work with them, they could have whatever experience they were having. And I really wanted to be able to sit with the suffering that they were having and be as compassionate as possible without taking that on. So that really drew me more into practice. I also had some early experiences with a couple of patients that I had. One was a young guy who was 26. Who had lung cancer, who I became very close to. And another was a woman who was, I guess she was like maybe 55. And both of these people were very inspirational to me in my relationship with them. And they both, for some reason, had developed a sense of peacefulness about what was happening with them. And I felt like it was just really a privilege to be with them. And I remember sitting with both of them and with this guy, John, who was just an amazing young person. He was 26. The day before he died, we were talking, we were hanging out, and he spent a long time thanking me for coming over and helping with him, and I said, oh yeah, that's great, I'll see you tomorrow. And then he died 2 hours after I left. And I just realized that, that's part of being mindful, is just accepting the gifts that people give you and sort of letting go of the agenda. And so I was very drawn to that, aspects of this program, just being able to use the practice, not just sitting, but out in the world. And so basically I just really started working it as much as I could. I also was, as I started being able to actually remember what Dharma speakers said, certain things sort of stuck with me, and I became really interested in the ethical guidelines, or I guess they're the 5 precepts, or just kind of trying to integrate those into my life and see what it would be, because I've sort of always had a kind of a messy, chaotic life, and I just thought it was time to start cleaning things up. And when I started, especially like in the area of right speech, I just, like Mark was talking about, there's just, I would often listen to myself say stuff that I regretted right after I said it, and there was just a lot I felt that I could do. And as part of this 2-year practice, they were having us do this work, and so I just felt very drawn to this practice, and really interested in just doing the whatever I could outside of sitting. So. Let's see. And then I guess in the process made a bunch of mistakes. I listened to some talks about generosity. I think it was a talk here that someone talked about, and I was very inspired. I went to the ATM and got out all these $20 bills and stood in front of changed money into dollars, and stood in front of my Safeway handing out dollar bills to all the people, and just created a horrible situation. People arguing and fighting, and just so just learned a lot of things by making a lot of mistakes and trying a lot of things out. Anyway, I guess I'll stop there, but I do feel a lot of gratitude to this sangha, because I feel like when I look at it, I see a lot of people, and I feel like a lot of the people here have been mentors to me and helped me in a lot of different ways, that at a lot of different times people have said things to me or directed me to do certain things that have been really very helpful to me. Including, I would be remiss if I didn't say, becoming involved in the prison outreach project that Don Weaver was working. And when I volunteered to help him, I didn't realize that meant that he was just going to dump the whole project on me. And, but it's actually been a really great experience. I actually had no interest in prisons at all, and now I've gradually been learning about the prison system, and I find that that's even really a blessing. So, and now, there's quite a few people here that are corresponding with prisoners. We've been able to change that program a little bit, so that, because before we used to send out a letter saying we don't have a pen pal program, and now we do. We probably have 15 people that are corresponding with gay prisoners that are interested in Buddhism. And it's just really amazing that change has happened. So I feel like that's, providing a little bit of service to this community of men that are stuck behind bars. So anyway, thank you very much.
Are there any questions for the speakers? Clint.
This is to Mark. First of all, thank both of you. Very inspiring talks. I really enjoyed both of them. The Billy Club, you said that internally there's a commitment to getting engaged in activities there. Do you have outward engaged projects too? I'll give it that.
Yes, that's actually an interesting question. It's sort of yes and no. In the past, there's been more outreach to young gay people, particularly in northern counties. There's been work for supporting people with HIV. There's a scholarship fund. If people are in financial crisis, they can't pay their heating bill or something, they can approach the foundation, and there's money available to help them out. But really, the club is, or this community, really, it's whatever it is that the people, the Billies, are prepared to do. So it's not like, so if someone sort of stepped forward and said, "Oh, we would like to do X, Y, Z," why then that would be there may be ways that can be supported, and people can go ahead and do that. But it really has to do with what individual people are committed to do, versus the mission of outreach per se. But any way that we can sort of help to manifest that fundamental mission of community intimacy and personal exploration, we do and we support. So.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I want to thank you guys. I love these talks, and these are perfect examples, everyone, guys who resisted the invitation to speak. And it's pure gold, so thank you very much. You guys have learned how to speak the truth in your lives, and it's a great gift to us. And I've known you both for a while, and I learned so much today. It's really, so thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you both as well. I was just intrigued in both of your talks about the idea of right livelihood, and you made a career transition, and you're engaged in this program at the Spirit Rock. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you made that transition from in a practical standpoint, of being able to leave your job, and also at the Spirit Rock program, whether part of the program, part of the participants in the program end up not changing their livelihoods, but change their relationship to their existing livelihood, versus, is it mostly about changing into something completely different?
Well, I guess I'll start first. I did change my job. I didn't change my career. So I'm still doing the work that I did before. I'm just doing it at a different company, my city planning work. So that's one thing. I will say this, though, that when I did quit my job, I really made a conscious decision to not live into my fears, but to live into possibility. And that was I really had to be very clear about that. Because, you quit your job of 15 years, I could be, I could retire there probably, so, but it was, I just had to move on. So, and I also will say that I'm in the same career, and it's, I'm going through some stressful times at work right now, and I actually am very intrigued by the hospice work and the stuff that Baruch does, because I'm thinking part of me wants to wholesale change, I haven't really, I just say it like that because I haven't really done much more thinking, but there's certain things that get expressed in the work I do, and there's certain things that don't get expressed in the work that I do. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll let that unfold as it may, but that's what I'm about that. So.
Well, just the people that are in that Spirit Rock program are all basically social activists doing really intense work out in the world. A lot of people have changed their jobs. A lot of people aren't in the program anymore because they're in different parts of the world. A woman who is in the program is leaving the program this weekend and going to India to do work over there. So I think the program's been a catalyst for people to really ramp up what they're doing. People that were engaged already are just like... With me, one of the things that I started doing, which I'm kind of excited about, and it's sort of a slow process, but maybe at some point other people in the sangha might participate, is there's this project over in Oakland. It's called Mindfulness in the Schools program, and they basically go into the elementary schools and teach kids mindfulness practice. And they actually, and I was interested in volunteering in that, and now they're in the process of, I'm just in the process of training to become a teacher so that I could, a teacher in their program so that I could go in and work with the kids. And it is just phenomenal to watch kindergartners and first graders, and, you know, they go all the way up, just sit there with their eyes closed, and it's a huge success when they can sit for like 2 minutes. And I'm hoping at some point, my partner is a school teacher in San Francisco, and he took the training too, and he's using the practice in his classroom, and he says it's amazing. You know, they use one of those singing bowls, and the kids respond incredibly, even kids that, and part of it is just teaching kids to pay attention to themselves and what's going on. And so I'm hoping it turns out by participating in that I could actually get paid for teaching in schools. And that would be really a nice balance for me with the hospice work, to be in the schools with the kids. So that's how I'm hoping kind of a transition happens, where I could find little gigs like that to do that. Aren't necessarily sitting in front of a bunch of adults, but talking to a bunch of little kids. Because it's a very scaled down Dharma talk.
Gentlemen, thank you for your sharing. Before I forget, I wanted to let Baruch know I'm a little short on cash today. So hoping you might revisit that practice. I'm just touched by both of you on your path, seeing how much dana, gratitude and service, was so much a part of what your experience was. And what was it? What was the shift that made you want to experience and offer dana more as a part of your practice? Or was there a consciousness or an awareness where, you know, I know Mark, you said that you kind of grew up with the idea that service was just a part of just being a human being. Was there something that happened where you really got conscious about it and conscientious and were inspired to make a commitment to service?
Do you want to start first?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, you know, every time you go to not anything, but a lot of retreats you go to, it always ends with a big Dharma talk. And they just talk about it, and they talk about, especially at Spirit Rock, dana is a big thing because then the teachers get paid. And I've just heard a zillion talks about that, and I basically am a very stingy person. And I have a daughter who constantly she just wants stuff all the time, and usually it's money. And so it's been really hard for me to be relaxed around that. And I guess like this, in the past year I went to some Dharma talk, and I realized, because I do hospice work, but I do it per diem, that if I calculated out exactly how much money I need to live, I could work one extra day and I could donate that money to something. And so I started doing that, and it's been like the hugest shift for me. And it's been a really major joy in my life to be able to give money to all these different places. I recently went to Costco and bought $200 worth of socks to give to this, at Kaiser where I work, they have this big bin, and for weeks I've been looking and there's like about this many socks in the bin, and I just thought, well, we should just fill it up, and so I just went and got a bunch of socks and, filled it up, and that's been like a really big shift for me, just figuring out what I basically need and then just working 1 or 2 extra days and then just being able to give that money. It took me a long time to figure that out. But it's been good in terms of my stinginess.
I guess I would say for myself, I don't know. It's kind of a little complicated, but I think that I looked at my parents and what they did, and the way they were in service, and the kind of contributions they did, but there was a part of me that resented it or resented them, or didn't feel I was part of this community, like I'd said before. So I think that I think I felt some, it took me a long time I had a lot of resistance, so it took me a long time to kind of break through my resistance in engaging the world around me and those sorts of things. So really, I think that awareness really did happen much later on in my 40s. It really started probably with just becoming just much more aware of the notion of service. It really happened through my Buddhist practice. So it happened then, I think. And it all kind of created this kind of rich stew, with the Billy Club and all that sort of thing. So.
Well, we should move on with the regular announcements. Please feel free to talk to our speakers later. Our host today is Larry, the Berkeley food mogul.
So there's lacquer fermented coolers and fruit and some cookies out there, and there's tea, and you're supposed to wash your cup. There's the Donna Bowl. Who brings the Donna Bowl around? Is that true? Okay, so I'm going to be working on Donna Bowl, and suggested donation something like $5 or $8. It's what helps us to afford being in this place and some of the other good work that we do. Let's see. I think, is that it? I do this so every time it's new. There's a list for getting in touch with other members of the sangha, and it's on the counter. And if you want to add your name and your contact information, that's a list that you can add onto, and that's a nice way of finding other people when you need. And I think that's it.
Any other announcements? Howard?
Yeah, next week we continue to tap into local wisdom of the Sangha, and Tom Bruin will be presenting, and I think, Tom, it's going to be somewhat of an interactive Dharma dialogue, and with Tom, and talking about spiritual materialism.
Yeah, so everybody, please bring a stack of $1 bills. I'll share you right away. On December 15th, which is a week from tomorrow, a few of us are making a little pilgrimage down to Redwood City, where Gil Fronstal teaches and has the Dharma Center. Gil is a respected teacher of both Vipassana and Zen, and he has invited any number of us that want to come down and talk about sexuality and the Dharma. Brooke and I actually put a request out to him to come to this group, and he said, no, you come to me. So if anybody would like to come along, it's going to be during the daytime, unfortunately for those that work. But
what day of the week are you talking about?
Sorry?
What day?
Monday? Or?
Monday the 15th, I think 10 to 12, Brooke, is that right? 10 to 12. And we'll carpool. So see me afterwards, or give me your name or email, and if you're interested in joining us.
Any other announcement?
I'm organizing a bike ride. I'm part of a Sunday night group with Eugene Cash, and we're supporting a group in South Africa that does AIDS work. And we're doing a fundraising bike ride on January 11th to raise money for this program in South Africa does work with orphans and home health care and legal services. So what we're asking is it's going to be a short bike ride doing the Tiburon Loop with the Dharma talk in Tiburon by Eugene Cash. And we're asking people to try to at least raise $50 in money from family and friends. And maybe to even ask for that for a Christmas gift. But if you'd like to do a bike ride, want to be part of a community, would love to have you. Just come see me after the group and I'll give you more information.
Yep.
I just want to announce that Jim Stewart and I are performing with our chorus the Bach Christmas Oratorio tonight at 7:30. It's at St. Paul's Church in Noe Valley, at church in 29th. And it went really well last night. It's a beautiful piece and a way to get into the holiday spirit. And it's a festive, a kind of inwardly spiritual experience. And there's a period orchestra and 4 really wonderful soloists, and you get to hear Jim and my golden throats.
We were fabulous. It's really high music, very upwardly lifting. Guys are like
Howard?
I just wanted to acknowledge it's really good today to see Mark and Arlene back. Yay.
Mark, could you give a closing thing?
Oh, I'd rather not.
All right.
I said to Baruch once too. You want to give a closing?
By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow, and never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And live in equanimity without too much attachment, too much aversion, and live believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.